So right now, myself with Eric Burlison on UAP. A lot of stuff in here, so enjoy. Well, happy to welcome him back here to UAP. It's Representative Eric Burlison. Eric, thanks so much for coming back on here to UAP. I know there's a lot to cover, so I appreciate you coming back on.
Yeah, you do a good job, Stephen.
I guess I'll just jump right in and talk about someone that I know you just were with recently in Mexico, and someone that I just had on the show, Michael Mazzola, who is a filmmaker, director, writer, producer. And I know you guys ran across each other in Mexico recently as you met up with Dr. Stephen Greer and Jaime Malzahn to kind of see for yourself the couple of controversial items, the Nazca mummies and the Buga sphere, which comes from Colombia. So on that end, that fascinated me when I saw those videos come out from Michael. I was like, holy cow, Eric is in Mexico looking at these things. I've been wanting to ask you, what was your impression when you got in front of the Nazca mummies and the sphere, if you can talk on both a little bit separately?
Yeah, so I would say leading up to that, it was kind of a debate as to whether or not it would be a worthwhile trip. And I kind of gauged a lot of input from different individuals now. As you know, I have Grush as a consultant on my team. He really didn't, the sphere was kind of a puzzle to him. He thought it was probably, I won't put words in his mouth, but he didn't have much to say about the sphere, and probably thought it wasn't worthwhile going down to see that. What he did say is that if the mummies were the tridactyls, that were the larger ones, that it would be worth seeing. Now say that in general, he cautioned me about some of the people going down and their credibility. And so I understand that, but at the end of the day, I was at a situation where I had the opportunity to go because Michael had reached out to me. I'd learned that there was a team of scientists that contract with NASA that were also going to be there, and one individual that is a former employee of NASA that was going to be down there, and that gave a little bit of credibility to me, and I wanted to see that in action, to see the samples being taken, and so that's why I went. I mean, that, and along with the fact that we were out of session, we weren't. I had a day and a half or so in my schedule to make it work, and so it just seemed the stars aligned, and that's why I went.
So once you were done with it, what were you thinking to yourself? Did you feel like, okay, I'm glad I went, that was worth the trip, or was the thought, I don't know if that was something I maybe should have spent time on?
I would say spending time with Jaime Malzahn, his team, spending time with the people that were there was worthwhile. I would say I'm very skeptical that the Buga sphere is real. I'm very skeptical that the mummies that we saw are real. But I'm also open to wait until I hear back from the scientists who took the samples. They took samples from the mummies, from bones from the mummies, and then they took samples from the sphere in multiple places. And so we'll see. Now, at first glance, they both look handmade. They both do not look. They don't. There's nothing about that makes me think this had to have been made by a superior, advanced civilization. It looks definitely handmade in those aspects. And so, in reference to the sphere, as far as the mummies, they just didn't look anatomically like those things could have possibly been a living creature. And so because of that, I'm highly suspicious, but I'm waiting until we get some results from the scientists.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You mentioned Grush, how you kind of consulted with him on those two things. It doesn't sound, again, not to put words in his mouth, but just reading the situation, it doesn't sound like he's too convinced about the sphere, maybe on the same page as you when it comes to the possibilities of the sphere. But was he a little bit more intrigued by the Nazca mummies themselves, where he thinks that that's a possibility of those things actually, representing a mummified non-human?
Now what he indicated is that there's a different set of mummies that are, I believe, in Peru, that he said are very intriguing.
Now, you recently made some news, and that was one of the things you made news on. Another part was what you had to say recently in a Twitter space, I believe, actually, where it came across about David Grush and what he has told you as far as what President Trump has been briefed on in the past. Now, I know there was some distinction here that, you were trying to impart in everybody that Grush is not the one that briefed Trump, but he was told about what Trump was briefed. And it had to do with the different beings that have been around. Is that right?
Right. And I would say definitively Grush was not the one that briefed Trump. I don't know if I recall that Grush was the one that told me. I've talked to so many people, but I have been told, what I can say is I have been told about a briefing that Trump in his first administration was briefed towards the end of his first administration. What I was told is that he was briefed about several things, the entire program. But what was an interesting part of the conversation was that when he was told that there are hybrids, some of them may be living in the United States, he jokingly asked, "Is Adam Schiff one of them?"
That sounds like a Trumpism. I mean, I'm not going to lie. That sounds like something that would have happened in a briefing.
And so, I don't know how I wasn't there. I don't have definitive evidence as that briefing happened. I'm just relaying to you what I have heard.
It is interesting, though, to kind of put the puzzle pieces together, which I just tend to do. Sometimes it leads me nowhere. Sometimes maybe it's something. So I wonder, Eric, do you think I'm trying to connect too many dots? And this is just me observing things, and I might be way out of line here, but I just think back to when Trump had an interview with Joe Rogan right before he won his second term, and Rogan was asking him about, what do you know about the aliens? Have you been told? And Trump kind of, shoulders were slumped and a little bit, body language-wise anyway, seemed a little bit somber in answering, yeah, I've been told some different things. Do you think that had anything to do with what we're being told here about what he was briefed on in his first term?
It could be. I mean, if that's true, then certainly his response, he's processing how much he can say and what he wants to say.
What do you think about that possibility yourself, Eric, about the possibility of hybrids? Because, this has been brought up a lot. I'm sure, has Grush spoken to you about this in the past, about specifically his take or his knowledge on hybrids?
What I can say is like this phenomenon is a repeating phenomenon when it comes to this topic. Whether it's some form of genetic insertion into humanity, or there are hybrids that are occurring, it seems to be a common topic, and then often it commonly is connected to discussions about the Nephilim in the Bible and these hybrid beings that were created whenever the angels came down and procreated with human women. So look, it just is an ongoing conversation. It's intriguing. I can't definitively say this is true because, again, I go back to I'm somebody that I want to see it for myself. So I've not seen anything direct. I've not seen direct evidence that this is true.
Now, there was something that came out recently about the Tic Tac. It's commonly referred to, that's, David Fravor saw and has been famously shown the video from the USS Nimitz back in 2004. And many people have claimed to see the Tic Tac type craft since then. But now it's being talked about as something that was reverse or possibly reverse engineered. Maybe I'm putting my own words in there, from Lockheed in their Skunk Works operation. And this actually is a recent claim coming out from Ross Coulthart as well, where he's saying this is it. This is something that has been made. It's ours. I know we talked about Dr. Stephen Greer. He's said this before. The Tic Tac is ours. And I know you've heard some of those different things as well. Is that where we're at? What's the percentage on that in your mind, Eric, that is the case, that the Tic Tac is U.S. technology? I
mean, it's obvious that they're going to have technology that they've developed that is being hidden.
Sure.
That's part of our national secrets and our security and our defense. The question is what level of technological advances have they made? What kind of breakthrough technology have they discovered, a breakthrough technology that they are keeping under lock and key? I was when I was trying to leave Reagan a couple of weeks ago, and I was trying to go to my friend Timothy Alberino's conference at the NEFCON in Montana. And as I sat on the tarmac of Reagan for about 3.5 hours, not moving, waiting for weather delays and just being stuck in this can like a sardine, sweating, and then having ultimately pulled back to the gate and having our flight canceled. After going through that torture, I thought to myself, if Lockheed or whomever has this breakthrough technology and they're not sharing it with the world, I'm going to be really pissed.
It's a good point, right? I mean, and that's a real life experience, right? Like, we've all been there. We've all sat on that tarmac. We've all had the flight delays, and you think to yourself, man, I wish I could just teleport somewhere. And then you have to start to think to yourself, well, maybe we can, and we just haven't been told that we can. When it comes to, what's being kept under wraps, who has the responsibility, do you think, Eric, to say, you know what, enough's enough, we got to get some of this stuff out to the general public? Like, there's so much that we've made in the past, say, 40 years, or if you want to boil it down to 20 years, that's fine too, that would advance human civilization so much that we got to at least put out maybe 10% of it. Like, whose responsibility is that to ultimately make that call?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know who has that responsibility. A lot of these things are being decided by the White House. So a lot of these special access programs are under the purview, directly under the supervision of the White House. And so we'll see. Now, I will say, and this is kind of breaking news a little bit, but just as a sidebar discussion, not as part of the negotiations, but just being in the room and talking with White House officials, I made a request for myself and Tim Burchett and Anna and the rest of the UAP caucus to get a tour of Area 51, of Wright-Patterson, and then get a full briefing from the White House on their special access programs related to UAP. And so one of those has been somewhat greenlit, and I'm still waiting to hear back from the others. Wow.
Okay. So yeah, that's new. Have there ever been, I'm trying to think of a scenario where there's been congressmen and congresswomen who have gotten tours of those bases before, like inside the halls of Area 51. Has that happened before?
I'm not sure. It certainly has not been public that that's happened. Yeah. I have a feeling. I think if you're on House Intel or House Armed Services or Senate Armed Services or Senate Intel, you probably, I would be shocked if those chairmen and chairwomen have not been able to get access. But that's my assumption, is that at least some members of Congress have had some access.
Well, that's great. I mean, good on you for putting in that request. Definitely keep us updated on that if you can. If you do get those, requests met and you do get to kind of go in there, maybe you can at least tell us if you got to go. Obviously you probably won't be able to say what you saw.
So, for example, when Tim Phillips recently, the gentleman who left Arrow, he's had a few interviews that were kind of intriguing to me. One of the things that he said that was concerning to me is that he was willing, or he had requested, and that the individual that was responsible for the special access programs related to UAPs was willing to give a briefing to the UAP caucus, and that which we did have a scheduled briefing, and we did have a briefing with Arrow, but at that briefing it was extremely disappointing because we didn't really get much information. But what he said in his interviews, Tim Phillips said that that briefing was blocked by House leadership. So I reached out to the speaker. Anna Polina Luna and I and Tim Burchett directly confronted the speaker about this, or asked him about this on the floor. And he had no idea what we were talking about. He texted me later that he had his team look into it, and it appears that this is not from the speaker, but what he said to me was vague enough to indicate that it appears that we were blocked by one of the chairmen of either Intel or House Armed Services. Wow. And so I'm going to pursue that briefing to be done, because now we have a new chairman of House Intel. the previous chairman was somewhat hostile to disclosure on this topic, and so hopefully we're able to get a different answer from this new chairman.
What do you think that the crux of the stonewalling is, Eric? Is it's, and this is just my assumption that I'm going to throw out there as part of the question, so you can take it whichever way you want and say yes or no. But the way I've always seen this is that it really just comes down to power and money when we're talking about politics mixed with government contractors. And what I mean by that is different representatives who might be in the same district as a Wright Pat or as an Area 51, and they might have, sweetheart deals with some of these contractors to say, hey, you know what? Let's keep this under wraps. You're in our district. We want to make sure that these things don't get out. Am I off base by saying that as to why some of this stuff is stonewalled, or am I onto something?
Yeah, I mean, just it's logic and common sense that politicians like to work alongside lobbyists in K Street and special interests. Politicians also like to trade in intelligence. I mean, ironically, the Intelligence Committee is a committee that you don't raise hardly any money being on that committee, but yet people want to be on that committee because information is power. And so, and I think that to that extent, if everyone has that information, then it's not powerful. So I think some people who are in Intel, or particularly the previous Intel chairman, probably didn't want anybody to know because that reduces the power of those who do have the knowledge of it.
Do you think we're at a point where President Trump is kind of caught in the middle? Or do you think he has his mind? I know it's hard to say because everybody's going all different ways. Or do you think he's kind of set in one way? And the reason I ask that is because he has said on a couple of occasions, and it's made its way around social media. The clips have been taken where he says, we have weapons that no one could even imagine, and we'll use them if we have to. Do you think he's being boisterous, or do you think he's referring to things like the technology that's used in the Tic Tac and who knows what else?
Yeah, I do think we probably have advanced weapons. I do think where we have a shortfall is the ability to manufacture things at scale. I mean, the real security vulnerability in the United States is that we have a situation where our manufacturing base has moved out of the country, and we are relying on other countries to manufacture some of the things that we need. And so it's been said that if we were to have to go to war with China, we would run out of things to throw at China after a couple of months, and China would manufacture themselves into a victory. So we've got to reverse that. And so, which is why, as the chairman of Energy, Economic Growth, and Regulatory Reform, those are the things that I'm focused on, is trying to bolster our manufacturing sector, get us back to a place of dominance in the economy, and making sure that whatever technological advances that we've made, we're able to manufacture that.
Yeah, at scale, right, and that's really important, and good on you for doing that. With that in mind, is it, when we talk about some of this technology that's out there, I have to ask, because David Grush has alluded to this before, are you at a point where you feel like the technology that is out there, Tic Tac or otherwise, has been made by just really, really smart people, like, Oppenheimer Trinity test type thing? Or is it a mix of that plus reverse engineering from, advanced technology that's been recovered from other beings?
Yeah, I mean, I'll leave the door open about the reverse engineering, whether that's been occurring. But I think that the most likely scenario is that it's just the progression of our technology that's been advanced over time.
Do you think that's most of what people see, Eric? Just, theorizing, is that most of what people see where they can't explain it and they say, well, I saw a UFO, it was moving at unbelievable speed, instantaneous acceleration, or it was hovering and then it just took off? Like, do you think it's mostly human technology and some alien stuff mixed in?
Yeah, even when you saw the interviews, for example, of Jacob Barber, when I talked with Grush, when I talked with other people who study the UFO technology or phenomenon, they will consistently say that the vast, vast, vast majority of things, including Arrow, when they kind of run to ground, the thousands of reports that they've had, the thousands of things that they've investigated, when they run them to ground, it's mostly somewhat it's man-made things or a phenomenon that are mistaken as a UFO. So I think that that's the case. What Grush, what Barber, what others would say, and including Lou, is that there are those rare moments when something extraterrestrial or non-human intelligence is encountered, and that does exist. So a lot of them, and obviously Lou has come out with a book about it, about the reverse engineering. Grush has said the same thing. So I just have yet to be able to get any of the evidence or documents or proof that they had in their possession in their official capacity.
It's fascinating. I look forward to you getting that proof because, man, when some of that stuff comes out definitively, it's a game changer. I think we could probably agree on that. You talked about Tim Phillips earlier when you speak about Arrow. Another name that comes up is Sean Kirkpatrick. And I think you were quoted earlier, maybe a few weeks ago, as talking about Sean Kirkpatrick, saying in relation to the Wall Street Journal article, which has been, highly documented at this point. I think everybody kind of knows what that was all about, kind of saying that everything was a psyop, and that, there is no aliens and it's all just government technology. And you had said, or kind of alluded to the fact that, well, if that is the case, then is the Air Force kind of compromised when it comes to the legalities of things, that they weren't disclosing some things, and that they have been using, taxpayer money without kind of disclosing some of these things to Congress. Is that something that do you think is going to be looked into on your end?
On my end, yeah, I'm going to definitely try to look into seeing if there's been violations of law. Look, even if it isn't against the law, it should be against the law to create a misinformation campaign to cause the American people to go down a wild goose chase and spend all kinds of time, money, and energy to have members of Congress investigate something, and because you, not because it's naturally happened, but because you stoke the flames. I think that there certainly should be some level of. I think we need to investigate that and determine if a law has been broken, and if not, maybe we need to make a law.
That said, what is the big secret? And what I mean by that is, recently, now there's always been reports of this, but again, recently there's reports of death threats to people within the agencies who want to talk about these things. It's kind of a twofold question. One, have you heard about some of those things from David Grush directly, that he's heard of death threats from people who want to come out to talk about the technologies? And two, what is the big secret that prevents all this from coming out? Is it just strictly advanced technology that we want to keep to ourselves away from adversaries? Or is there something more to it about other life? Which one is bigger?
Yeah, I think that to some extent, the whistleblowers are afraid of losing their jobs. They're afraid of losing their security clearances, and they're afraid of prosecution. David Grush is a good example. I mean, he's lost his benefits. He's lost his retirement in stepping away from the military in order to be a whistleblower. He's given up a lot, and I think that he deserves to have that given back to him. But that should not be the case for other whistleblowers that come forward. They should not have to see him as an example of what their life is going to end up like, and because it is definitely a chilling thing. And so that I think there has been. David has talked about some people that have passed, and questioned that the way in which they died, and suspected that it might have their connection and involvement with being a whistleblower. But we don't have anything definitive. I have sent referrals to an investigative team to investigate a particular death, and we're going to continue to do that. Wow.
So there's one that actually is in your mind that you're thinking about now that was pretty suspicious, like suspicious enough for you to act on it.
That's right. Yeah.
Clearly something that was suspicious enough to look into, where someone actually did die. Wow, that's startling. Well,
and it could be unrelated, but we just don't know. There's enough suspicion that it needs to be investigated.
And this person worked within the government and government programs?
Mm-hmm.
You know, when stuff like that happens, how hard is it to try to move forward with a SCIF, with a new SCIF, with, you know, a Disclosure Act in the NDAA, with a new hearing, trying to set up a new hearing? I mean, is that a setback for you guys when stuff like that happens?
It is. And it's also a setback that, that definitely set us back. And because we had a series of hearings that were set up in 1 week. It was going to basically be UAP week. And that really kind of rocked that entire week and made it really kind of reduce the impact of that. We did have some meetings that I thought were very productive, but it could have been a lot more productive. And it's because because of what happened. And so I think that if the UAP community had not been so brutal online, we probably would have had a better week.
Now that we're a couple of months removed from that, is there something coming up in the future for you guys as far as the Transparency Task Force, so different gifts that you want to try to get out there and hearing dates?
Yeah, we're pursuing a hearing date. We have got a list of people that we're looking at. We're actually looking at doing potentially two. One with some people that are direct whistleblowers, people that have had, when I say direct, they've had eyes directly on or have personally encountered UAP. Not somebody out and about like Joe Blow out there that saw something. There's thousands and thousands of people like that. We're talking about people that have worked for the Pentagon or worked in a government program where they worked in and around this technology, whether it was through crash retrieval or through reverse engineering. That's what we're pursuing right now. The next hearing after that is where we're gonna, once we're able to get information, we're looking at doing some interrogatories, which is where you take some of the things that have been said in these briefings, in these hearings, in these open hearings under oath, and then we send a letter, a formal letter as a committee asking for answers from, whether it's Tulsi Gabbard or whomever it is that we need to be asking these questions of, and then which would set up the potential second hearing, which would hopefully be able to include people like Tulsi Gabbard to be able to come forward. And I've been told that she's a friendly when it comes to this topic, that she wants disclosure. She wants to help bring about disclosure on this topic.
Yeah, I was actually about to ask that. I know I'm probably overstaying my welcome here, but it's just such an interesting conversation. I can't help but to keep asking questions. So feel free to just tell me to shut up at some point. But when you talk about that possibility of a second hearing, could we actually see, because actually this came up when I spoke to Stephen Bassett, who I'm sure you're aware of there in D.C. He's, a big disclosure advocate there. Is that something that we could see a future where you do have a Tulsi Gabbard, Director of National Intelligence, where you do have, and maybe this is a pipe dream, but a John Ratcliffe, a CIA director, a Kash Patel, in FBI, or even Dan Bongino as far as, a deputy director? Are we talking about heads of agencies in a hearing to answer questions on UAP?
Yeah, nothing's set in stone, but that's been one of the goals of the UAP, or the Disclosure Task Force.
Wow, that would be quite the sight. When you talk about firsthand witnesses, are these names that people have never heard before, that working on these programs, that are willing to come out and talk about it under oath? Would these be new names?
Yeah, there'll be some names that are not new, and then some that are going to be new. Interesting.
And these are like career people. They've been working on these things for years.
Yeah.
Is there a point where something happens, you find out something, you do go to Area 51 and go within the inner sanctums of Area 51 or Wright-Patterson and go in the underground tunnels and whatnot, or you find out something in a SCIF? Is there a point that you would see, just for yourself, where if you found out a piece of information that would actually stop you in your tracks and make you say, you know what, I kind of understand why this is a secret now. And you would actually stop pursuing it in a way to bring about open disclosure. Is there anything that would make you do that?
No, at the end of the day, I do believe that the public deserves to know. I don't think that the topic of the existence of non-human intelligence is in the rightful hands of any government, period. And so I will always pursue that disclosure. I would probably want to make sure that we protect our military secrets and the things that we've got in our possession and our capabilities. But I do not think that the topic of non-human intelligence belongs to any government whatsoever. And so I will continue to pursue that. And I can, Stephen, look, if I have come to a moment where I'm convinced, you'll probably know. You'll know, because the way in which I talk about the topic will change.
Interesting. All right. Well, we'll keep an eye out for the clues, or an ear out for the clues as well. Eric Burlison, thank you so much for all the time. Been extremely generous with your time here today, and I hope that we can stay in touch. And as things develop, maybe bring you back on